So Christos Astaras is a wildlife researcher at the Forest Institute in Greece with a wealth of experience using passive acoustic monitoring to combat wildlife crime and improve wildlife monitoring across Africa, the Americas, and Europe. We've invited Christos today because his work has a strong focus on applied conservation, and he'll share his insights on integrating PAM into protected area management, reflecting on key lessons learned, and offering a vision for the future of this critical conservation tool. Christos, do you want to take it away?
I will try. Thank you very much for the introduction, Carol. That was a great talk. I will be focusing a bit more sort of at the regional level rather than the global. I'm a wildlife researcher, as Stephanie mentioned, in Greece, and I have been working with acoustic monitoring for the past 10 years or so, just a bit more than that. And although I do work also with wildlife monitoring, my primary focus and what I will talk about today is the use of acoustics to monitor human activities, typically within protected areas. We often refer to that as using acoustics as a wildlife law enforcement monitoring tool. I don't love that term. It's a bit militaristic and a bit narrow, focused on the patrolling and arrest. I think it's more of a tool for assessing existing conservation strategies and then feeding that information in decision support systems, whether these are from the very small, the level of part of a park to, to regional to national level. I think we all agree that monitoring should not be only about wildlife. It should be a bit more holistic. It should include elements that will help us understand patterns in wildlife populations, and that should include monitoring of threat levels, whether these are anthropogenic, like hunting, logging, or maybe disease, and of course, the effort that we put into conservation. And traditionally, and I think, I saw people from all over the world, I assume in many places, threat level monitoring is limited to indirect signs like spent cartridges, signs of hunting, huts in tropical forests, which have very poor temporal resolution. That's hard to interpret the results. So acoustic monitor comes in, and hopefully I will show you some examples and fill in the gap by providing very high temporal and spatial resolution on what's happening, allowing to do adaptive management. And of course, I have an image here of a shotgun being used, but of course, any human activity that has a sound signature can be recording, like logging, grazing, like by recording the bells of the animals or the calls of the cows, or of course, vehicle traffic. Now, Renata mentioned her time at Cornell and how the Elephant Listening Project at that time, they did the first recording of gunshots, I think, in Gabon and Congo. And that's where I started also. It is based on one of the papers of Cornell, and then director Peter Reg of the Elephant Listening Project. I approached him, and I was at that time in Oxford at Wild Crew, and together we put up the first project that was specifically designed to monitoring poaching pressure within a protected area, and we did that in Korab National Park, Cameroon. It's a park in the border with Nigeria. We knew poaching was there, and together with Peter and James Madison University, a good friend there, Joshua Linder, we set up sensors and we let them run around the clock for 2 years. And we were able to show, and I have at the end some links to the papers, and I can send links also to the chat, but we show the red lines and the blue lines are the 2 different years, but you had very sort of strong patterns, whether it was at a weekly level, sort of hunting, picking up Tuesday and Wednesday, because people will come out and sell the meat on Friday at the bush market. At the DL level, almost 2/3 of the gunshots were at night when no patrols were happening at night. And there was also strong seasonal patterns with almost a 6-fold increase during Christmas, because everybody would go to either get meat to put on the table or to sell, convert that meat into money, and live Christmas like, the rest of the world celebrates, or whoever is like celebrating Christmas or New Year. So with that data, which is actually gunshot events, not estimated somehow pressure over the year, very fine resolution, we're able to persuade the German development agency that was funding those patrols and to work together with the park to do an experiment and say, okay, Christmas, year 3, how about we flood the park with optimal patrolling? So in the first two images below, we have sort of top-down view of the 50 square kilometers that we're monitoring. In the first 2 years, we had like very limited patrol effort on the trails and overall, just like token presence. In the third year, we had for 4 months, basically tenfold increase on every metric. Patrols at night, ambushes, one team coming in, one coming out. So if we were going to judge that only based on performance, we'll see that we would have open campaigns. We had cyber trackers on the guards, and they did all those patrols. But when we look at the results, the impact of that effort was that actually gun hunting even increased, right? So with that data in hand, we were able to persuade the funding, basically the donors of those patrols, that finally they should retrain the guards, they should introduce bonuses that were completely against that idea, and that bonuses should be tied to actual impact reduction, so that we achieve a 20% reduction, not just arrests. Unfortunately, civil war, sort of civil unrest, how they call it, but it was a civil war at the local level in Cameroon, has not allowed us to go back and see a 4th and 5th iteration of that attempt. But this is how basically protected area management level decision and policy of how to basically to motivate people changed. Now, going to another short example from Greece. We have in Greece, and this is a common problem across the southern Mediterranean, like Malta, Cyprus, Greece, southern Italy, southern France, but we have a lot of illegal poaching of birds during spring migration. This is strictly prohibited, but nevertheless, it is a problem. And in the Ionian Islands, that some of you may have gone, like Corfu, Zante, which is a great place to be a tourist in late spring, is not a great place to be a turtle dove. And we were able, with just a few, 10, 12 sensors or so, in collaboration with the Hellenic Ornithological Society, were able to turn that pressure that certain circles were claiming that was not even a problem anymore, it was a historical problem, but not a problem anymore, were able to show that more than 57,000 birds were killed in just one single year. And these are birds pre-breeding, right? These are the birds who have the best fitness, survived wintering in sub-Saharan Africa, survived migrating over the Sahara and the Mediterranean, and within seconds of making land in Greece, boom, they were killed. And we shared that report and paper with the government, and we will not claim that that report and that data alone brought change, but it definitely gave metrics that politicians can understand. It was used effectively by the Ornithological Society. And in the last 3 years, we have seen a reduction in the legal quota of turtle dove hunting in fall. Greece is one of the few countries that in the fall, you have legal hunting of turtle doves in the fall. And there was a reduction from 200,000 to 36,000 this year. Now, why did that happen? Because of our paper? No, but we highlight how much sort of uncounted illegal poaching happens in the spring. And the hunting lobby felt that they were under risk of having a total shutdown of hunting in fall. So they preemptively brought down the quotas. Okay, so I think there's a clear, we're confident that it has had an impact. And I'll go with one last example, hopefully gives you ideas of how at a local to regional level you can use acoustic monitoring. This is a very important wetland for birds in the border area between Greece and Turkey. It's called the Evros River Delta National Park, not to be confused with the Evros in Spain. This is Evro between Greece and Turkey. For an entire hunting season, we placed together with the park rangers in places that they identified acoustic sensors that recorded around the clock for 4 months continuously. And we know this is the only place where waterfowl are legally hunted in Greece within wetlands. So this is legal hunting for the vast majority of it. And we found, we were able to record 110,000 gunshots in just 8 sensors in 4 months. No surprises there. We knew this was happening. We were able to see, for instance, in an area at the bottom where no hunting was supposed to be, that place, was respected, and to identify a critical problem that was often ignored, that while legal place and space and hunters and licenses, 40% of those gunshots, more than 45,000 gunshots, happen at the wrong time. So at time that it was too early in the morning or too late in the night to be able to discern what you were shooting. And when you have animals critically endangered, lesser fronted white geese, there are 100 in Europe in one flock, mixing together with white fronted geese that are, you cannot even separate them in the day. Imagine that at night, it was a big problem. So already the park bought their own sensors. They're trying to adopt this tool. We'll see how this goes from this point onward. But just with 8 sensors, what, 2,000-3,000 euros maximum, the cost of them, 200 euros in batteries and a month or so of analysis, we're able to provide very high resolution on activity patterns. Or, this is a legal hunting, site, on risk for critical animals, even estimate the amount of lead falling in the wetland. And we're using that data because in Europe, lead shot is illegal in wetlands, and we're able to come up with, by looking at number of spent cartridges that were lead shot versus steel shot, we're able now to share data with the government and say, look, this is still a persisting problem. You need to work in basically implementing the law that has been passed at the European Union level. All this was done in a transparent way. The data is there. It's very important when you're dealing with hot topics like hunting, because you're affecting big interests. Okay, whoever has a doubt, here is 4 terabytes of data. Go and play with it and tell me that these gunshots happen at a different time. In a replicable way, low cost, and also without involving a lot the local personnel. This is very important because, like probably the most places around the world, parks in Greece are also understaffed. Now, if all what I showed you, these 3 examples from Cameroon and 2 from Greece, show that passive acoustic monitoring is such a great tool for human activities, why it's not popular? Now, I would say if you look at publications coming out, it's just like a handful every year or so that focus on this use of acoustic monitoring. Now, of course, we have to be honest that not every legal activity has a sound signature. A lot of pressure on wildlife, whether it's snaring, poisoning, illegal netting of songbirds, for instance, it cannot be recorded with acoustic monitoring, and that's not the best tool for that activity, right? Some parks have primarily poaching through snares, and then acoustic is not ideal. But the biggest problem has to do with the fact that acoustic monitoring is not adopted to be able to be used to influence policy. And why is that? We have to be honest, a lot of people are hesitant or unwilling, in worst case scenario, to see the truth. And that's not unique to acoustic monitoring. It's unique to anything that changes the status quo. It could be with camera trapping, it could be with something else. And why they're unwilling? Because there is, of course, concern of being judged. Being a protected area manager and coming and saying that there's like 45,000 gunshots that happen wrong time of the day and your game guys haven't done anything for it is a tough pill to swallow. Also, you are forced, when you know something, you are forced to act. And do you have the funds to act? Okay, yes, okay, is there money to send the rangers to patrol? Okay, and of course, let's not ignore the fact that there are pressures, lobbying pressures, whether it's like logging, hunting, tourism sectors that may influence the willingness to adopt this tool, let's say, at the national level. Another and second, and probably in many ways equally important problem is who is going to do the analysis. Okay, I know here in Wild Labs we're talking about a lot of advanced tools that is AI-based, is automated, but in reality, I work with tools which I call foolproof or idiot-proof, how you want to call them, but relatively low-tech and can be adopted today in the field. Okay, so eventually we get to the point that this problem may be phased out, but right now it's very much a realistic problem. And who will do the analysis? You need personnel who can handle computers, can pay attention to detail, remain in a site for many years if you invest in them, well-equipped, and most importantly, have the time to do the analysis, and that's the hardest part. Because the personnel who do this are typically the ones who would also do GAAS analysis, give talks, write proposals, and go to community meetings. Okay, so the parks cannot afford to lose them for a month to dedicate acoustic analysis to show the results that I showed to you. We did the analysis for those parks, but the success would be if the parks are doing that analysis, right? So our suggestion is that, and we have suggested that to Cameroon and in Greece, is that you should establish regional analysis hubs where personnel that are well-trained, well-paid, and maintained can quickly go through analysis and support 4, 5, 6, 7 parks. A lot of people said, yeah, that's a great idea, but when it comes to hiring new people or establishing such a lab, it doesn't materialize. Now, using, what Stephanie showed in the beginning, talking about horizon scan at the second level, funding those hubs and establishing them at the national or even regional, sort of like Central Africa level or Southern Greece level is important. We should also think that we need to invest in bringing acoustic monitoring training in the curricula of specialized colleges where we train the next rangers. For instance, there are such colleges in Africa where all the rangers of a country, let's say in Tanzania, pass through one place, or even like regular universities. And finally, we should focus on reducing the workload currently by increasing automation analysis. And in the future, ideally, we should get to the point of having full automation where just getting a report from your park of what was the hunting of last year or last month should be pretty much the same as we get now wildfire annual reports. Like in Greece, every year, and it's very much in the public domain, discussed in the newspapers, we know how many thousands of hectares were burned last year in wildfires, and the government is held accountable towards that goal. Have they reduced it? Have they managed to avoid the worst case scenario? Imagine being that widely available, how much poaching we had in Greece, for instance, last year. So I know I didn't look at the grand scale of how Carly approached things. I look at sort of from a bottom up, but hopefully I gave you a bit of food for thought for the discussion that follows. Here are some of the presentations. Feel free to drop me an email and discuss now or following days about the issues that are raised. Thank you very much.
Christos, that was fantastic. And it was just such a nice compliment to Carly's policy level presentation as well. And I think this topic, your presentation brought home why this topic is so important alongside the big innovation conversation and like, hey, where are we going? What's needed? How do we push the cutting edge of technology? I think this whole topic is grounding it in actually what's the point of all of this? Like what's the goal and what does it mean on the ground for the tools that we have and the impact that we actually need to have on conservation and the biodiversity targets. So thank you for grounding it for us. And I just wanted to, I know you kind of covered this in the last your last comments, which was a real focus on capacity building and thinking about the end users who will actually be using the tools. But and we completely agree with that. Even though this topic and this series is very much focused at the future of technology and innovation, I think 90% of our work is looking at like capacity building and actually meeting the needs on the ground as well, because that's what we hear so often from our community. It's a long comment to get to a question, which was
no, but it's like, right on. I agree. I agree wholly with the comment. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I wanted to know like what tech development that we've kind of talked about over the last few days, but a few weeks. But what would have the most impact on the ground for you? Is it that real-time acoustic monitoring system? And if so, how far away from it do you think we are?
Yes, I would say that real-time acoustic monitoring in many ways is a different tool. One is guiding responses now. Yeah. And the sort of the post hoc analysis, how I call it sometimes, it's sort of like the long-term monitoring. Real-time is invaluable when you have rare events, which are catastrophic, but very rare. So you need to act on that single gunshot on that mountain that kills, that rare antelope, right? But we're talking about 110,000 gunshots over 4 months. I don't need that information pouring in. I know it's happening, right? So these are two different tools in my mind. The sort of the automation of collection of the data to, let's go to a server, if we can sort of through satellite data, GSM network, bringing in the data to be analyzed, or having on-sensor analysis of gunshots and then sending the detections for long-term monitoring, I think that's where it's to go. There have been some attempts on that. We have tried a little bit in Greece. I think in the next 2-3 years, this thing, with people working on it, will be ironed out. But in my opinion, automating the analysis would basically answer the question of who will do it. Right now, we impress people, but we are almost like consultants. I'm a researcher. I want to get this, to persuade people. I want to go to the next task, work on something acoustic or non-acoustic. I don't want to be hired again and again to do the analysis for people, right? We need to persuade them, adopt it, and then to be able to be confident that they're using it correctly. Right now, if you allow them to handle it without being very carefully, then they will introduce a lot of biases, because still there is need of people clearing the fault detection stuff. If we get to the point of having almost perfect detectors, then automation, will almost completely skip human element, and we'll get to that sort of, how I call it, blue horizon, third level horizon scan, where it would just be pouring, like, what is the weather today and what was our handling pressure last 3 months? Oh, we need to work on that. Okay, so it's doable, but we're not there yet.
Okay, cool. Renata, did you want to jump in? I saw you getting very excited in the chat, responding to what Christos was talking about.
I will look into that, yes.
We do have one more speaker, so you can have a comment, and then I'm going to move on to our last speaker, then we can have a discussion.
It's just a comment. It's this capacity building thing that it's starting to get under my skin a little bit, because we all talk about capacity building, right? What is capacity building? It's the metaphor of, you don't fish and give the fish, you teach how to fish. You need to provide resources so people can actually, it's very easy to go and learn, people everywhere in the world, in third countries, developing countries, are smart, and they understand exactly how to do stuff with good training. But then they get home and there's no way to use it because they don't have the resources.
Yeah.
So just to give a little of thought, food for thought. That's all. Sorry.
Thumbs up.
Could not agree more. I feel like it's a good opportunity to drop in a link to our awards program, which is directed at increasing accessibility with resources to be able to buy technology and develop technology. That'll be opening again soon for applications. Okay, Christos, thank you for a fantastic presentation.